welcome to another segment of the Business of Aesthetics podcast. I'm Michael Walker, your host for this episode. And before we get started, I want to thank all of our incredible listeners from the United States, Canada, and around the globe. We couldn't do this without your continuous support. A special thank you also goes out to our sponsor for this episode, Equa Marketing. With 20 years of experience, Equa Marketing is a leader in digital marketing services for aesthetic practices. As part of this podcast, they are offering our listeners a complimentary digital marketing consultation, which will include a tailor-made 12-month digital strategy for your practice. You'll be able to head over to businessofesthetics, all one word, .org/MSM to book your consultation. Now, I'll share more about that opportunity later in our podcast, and wherever you're picking up this podcast, the link should be there as well for you. But without further delay, let's dive into our theme for today, the power of stacked treatments, maximizing results and revenues with Tracey Mancuso. Great to have you with us today, Tracey.
Thank you. It's amazing to be here.
And let me share a little bit of your background with our listeners. Tracey is a renowned expert in the medical aesthetics industry, known for helping clinics enhance treatment efficacy, streamline operations, and boost patient satisfaction through innovative approaches. With years of hands-on experience in developing treatment protocols and optimizing clinical results, Tracey is passionate about educating practitioners on how to combine multiple aesthetics treatments in a single session for maximum impact, a method known as stacked treatments. This strategy is gaining rapid attention in the aesthetics industry, offering patients faster transformations, reduced downtime, and enhanced collagen stimulation, while also increasing revenue opportunities for clinics. In today's episode, we'll explore why stacking treatments is becoming the go-to approach for modern aesthetic practices, how it improves patient outcomes, and how clinics can successfully integrate these strategies to differentiate themselves in a competitive market. As I say, Tracey, it is great to have you here, and I understand that you're down in the warm south and enjoying a wonderful warm winter. But let's go ahead and let's get started with the basics. So first of all, I alluded to it, but what exactly is stack treatment, and really, why is it becoming such a hot topic in the aesthetics industry?
Absolutely. You know what? Stacking's where it's at is exactly what I say. And I know that sounds really cliche, but it's not. So stacking treatments refer to combining two or more modalities in a single session to enhance both the quality and the speed of results. Unlike standalone treatments that address just one at a time, stacking allows us to target multiple layers of the skin and multiple aesthetic concerns in just a single visit. So for example, let's say a patient wants firmer and even toned skin. A laser alone might improve texture and pigment over time, but stacking it with our microneedle, well, now we simultaneously boost collagen and elastin while resurfacing the skin. This layered approach produces a more comprehensive transformation rather than just a treatment that could just address one of these indications alone. This is why stack treatments are becoming the gold standard. It's not just efficiency, but it's for superior results. And patients today don't want to just look better. They want to be a kind of multidimensional improvement. And that's something that you just don't get from a single modality treatment. So one other key advantage is that it's faster to see these improvements with less total downtime. So traditionally, a patient that might schedule separate treatments, each will have its own recovery period. And this means prolonged redness, swelling, peeling, and multiple treatments throughout the year. But by combining treatments strategically, we can compress that downtime into one healing phase while amplifying these benefits. And I often explain this as social downtime in terms of these real world scenarios, like, when can you hop on a Zoom call without a filter, of course? And when will they be able to take a selfie with just a mild editing? Or when can they confidently go to that live event? So stacking gets them there faster, which is dramatically improving their experience and satisfaction. So from a provider perspective, this approach also maximizes the impact of every single session, which instead of gradually working on one issue at a time, we can address texture and laxity and pigmentation and volume loss all in one appointment. Means fewer visits, better outcomes, and ultimately a stronger value proposition for both the patient and your practice.
Wow. I actually was very intrigued about what stacking was, and you just made it very understandable for me, and I'm not in your field. And I just, I get that. But now you've introduced a question that I want to go off script on, because it's, you're clearly passionate about this. And
I
I'm
love
curious,
it.
how did you get, what are the roots? What's the genesis of your passion around, I guess, really the aesthetics side? There's been a lot of conversation I'm hearing in the different rooms I'm in, and where they're talking this idea of lifestyle medicine, holistic wellness. And they're just saying, which really speaks to the stacked fundamentals that you just outlined.
Yes.
But when I think, where's the genesis of your passion for this? How'd you get into this?
So I'd love to say that I've just started stacking, but I didn't. I stacked before it was cool. And so a long time ago, and I'm talking about over a decade, and I'm just going to stop there because now I'm going to start aging myself. But over a decade ago, I was stacking, and people thought, oh, wow, that's pretty rogue and that's very, avant-garde to do this. But I realized that by being a little bit more, I'm going to say efficient during a treatment, and also by realizing I needed to treat multiple indications and be more efficient for that patient, I get a better clinical outcome and my patients would be happier. And people would say, how come your patients always come back? Because I had a really high retention rate. And I'd say that's because I address as much as I can, but once. And so it was really understanding that. And then now I kind of sit back and smile now that I know it's become a gold standard, because I go, oh, guess what? What I was doing all along was right. So it's been something that's been around in medicine for a long time. It's taken a while to adopt that mentality. A lot of people were concerned about safety. A lot of people were concerned about how does one affect the other. So it's understanding deeply each one of the treatments you're mixing in. And that really made the difference.
This whole idea with the stacking too, with the term that comes to mind when I think about, it's one thing to meet somebody's expectations, and we'll do this and we'll do this and we'll do this, and the progressive nature of the wellness, if you will, or the appearance. But I'm really passionate about the idea of unexpectedly delighting people. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what you're saying, because you were doing it before it was anything cool. People were amazed at what you're doing. But it wasn't just, there's a very organized process to it. And and when you're doing individual treatments, there's different things that have to happen, I'm sure, in different sequences. So it kind of leads me to the question I want to throw out is, how does combining multiple treatments in one session enhance results compared to performing them separately? And you kind of alluded to that. Can you just unpack that a little more for us?
Sure. So combining multiple treatments in one session enhances the results because each modality themselves target a different concern. And this creates a multidimensional approach to skin health. And realize what I've said there, skin health. I'm not talking about just beauty and what you look like. I'm talking about skin health, because that's the conversation we're having today. A single treatment often focuses on just one of the aspects of skin rejuvenation. For example, like a neurotoxin, it smooths dynamic wrinkles. But it does nothing for pigment, does nothing for vascular lesions, and it does nothing for skin laxity. By strategically layering multiple treatments in a single session, we can address multiple concerns more efficiently rather than treating them with just one thing over several months. And so here's an example of something that I might structure as a stack treatment. So I might start with an IPL, which clears pigment and vascular lesions and creates more even skin tone. And then I'm going to follow that with ultrasound to remodel collagen and elastin production in the deeper layers. After that, I'm going to layer on some RF microneedle to further stimulate collagen production, refine the skin texture, and I'll finish that off with some neurotoxin and HA filler to relax dynamic lines and restore that lost volume. The benefit of a stack like this is, instead of waiting months, or even a program like this might even take years if you're doing single treatments, to see these incremental improvements, patients experience more dynamic transformation in a shorter period of time. There's where they're really happy with me. Now, this doesn't mean that one session replaces an entire treatment plan. That's not the case, and that's not what I'm suggesting. Patients still need multiple sessions for optimal results. but stacking treatments reduces the overall number of treatment sessions. Remember, I said number of treatment sessions required because of the controlled injury and thermal stimulation from the different modalities that you're working together with. It amplifies all these results. So it's also important to clarify that point where I said it doesn't require fewer treatments. It means that fewer treatments in a single session. So that means in a single visit, we're delivering more of those modalities than we would if we spaced them all out individually, but we're still doing as many as we would do individually. And this not only accelerates visible results, but it also consolidates that downtime, like I spoke of.
I understand that. I'm intrigued how you mentioned a couple times how you can the interaction between skin and the different layers and and the implications and the different modalities, as you said. How did you learn to put this together? Where did the training, where did this come from? How did you put this together to come up with such a comprehensive and very advanced process?
Well, it's understanding each one of the modalities you work with. So my specialty, I don't inject. I have people who inject for me, but I actually am an energy-based medicine specialist. I understand each piece of energy that I am using, and I understand it so deeply how it affects each layer of the tissue, what the interaction is, and what I'm supposed to be intending to get. And when you understand that on a deep level, and not just buttonology, where I know what buttons to push, I know the technology. I don't even need to look at user manuals. I can figure it out by looking at it. I know what the energy does. Then I'm able to deploy them in such a way that I'm able to address all these indications for patients and be able to layer them safely. Safety is the big key with layering and stacking, because when you're stacking, you have to consider, the patient's skin type or skin tone. You also have to consider patient's downtime, sensitivity, skin thickness, all of these things, and you have to really know it. And I always say the same thing. I'm not a master. I'm a student of aesthetics, and I always will be. The day I'm a master, I'll retire.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I was just looking at your LinkedIn page, and it says here that your greatest passion lies in empowering others, whether through help patients achieve their aesthetic goals, advancing the skills of my peers, nurturing the growth of emerging professionals, or championing the leadership of women in the aesthetics industry. I think I just kind of heard that. And I think that's really admirable. I think that's, as long as you keep focused on that, it's always a journey. You'll never arrive.
Yeah,
and that's absolutely the best part of it. It's not what legacy in life is about. It's about, who you are and why you matter when it makes a difference in others. Remind me, near we get to the end, I want to tell you that the qualities you're presenting are what in my coaching world, my coaching company, we talk about influential leadership, and you kind of reflect that. But let me not go too far off script here. So, but let's go ahead. I've got another question for you here. So, when we look at the idea of stacking treatments, and obviously they can speed up transformations. What are some of the most effective treatment combinations for the faster visible results? Just before you answer that, though, and I know you actually already have answered part of that, but I think for our listeners, I think something that's really important, I always find with these podcasts, we get a lot of great information. You're getting like a fire hose of information just to download. So I really encourage you to try and capture a couple of thoughts that make sense to you, something that triggers you to think about doing something different after you get off this podcast. Because oftentimes we get so much information, and then we think, okay, well, I'll have a look at that later, and then later never happens because life happens. So I just encourage you to get something that like a soundbite is something. And the other side too, Tracey is a consultant. She works with people and organizations. So you now have a contact to reach out to dig into this deeper, but really to capture a couple of things that you really get you thinking, get you passionate about either a transition or a transformation of your organization. Now, does that make sense, Tracey?
Absolutely. That's a really good point, because especially when you're starting out with stacking, and especially for new practitioners, because we have so many people entering into this industry. And the last thing you want to do is be afraid, because we all start that learning journey off where we learn one or two things. Now we think we're a master, right? Then we have one complication. All of a sudden, now we know nothing and we're down in the pits of despair. And that always happens. I don't want anyone to feel that way. I want you to go out and do 6 different treatments in a layer and then hope for the best. Don't do that. Just start layering, and you can layer and stack treatments. Stacking treatments doesn't mean 10 treatments or 5 treatments. It can be a stack of just 2 until you feel comfortable. And then you can start adding more. As you feel more and more comfortable in your technology and your learning, you can start adding more and more to it. It's how you are feeling comfortable. So don't rush the process. That's the beauty of it. It's a process.
Nice. Yeah. And I think that's when it's about a process, then it's not simply a transactional thing of what you do and how you do it. It becomes a relational thing as well as who you are and why you matter. It suddenly presents you to your client in a way that builds trust faster and deeper because you're actually going unexpectedly delighting them, which is really exciting.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to go to this question. So, like, what role does collagen and elastin production play in treatment stacking? And how do specific modalities like RF microneedling and lasers enhance those effects?
So, collagen and elastin production are at the core of a stacking treatment, right? That's the whole principle of it, because they determine both the immediate and the long-term results. By strategically layering these treatments, we can stimulate contraction and remodeling in these proteins in one single session, something that these standalone treatments can't achieve as efficiently. So the key lies, though, in the temperature. And a lot of people don't think about this when they just kind of layer the treatments hoping for the best. I want you to think about the temperature you're getting to. So low heat, somewhere below 42 degrees centigrade. Sorry for you folks who are in the US. I deal in centigrade, so you'll just have to use your calculator. It stimulates fibroblasts for gradual collagen production. And sorry, I just had like a little pop-up there, seen in topical RF treatments. So if you want to stimulate collagen, but you don't want to cause any damage, you really want to stay below that 42 degrees centigrade. And that you see in topical RF treatments, right? The topically applied, not breaking the skin. When we get to the moderate heat, so that's 55 to 80 degrees centigrade, this typically causes controlled coagulation. And remember, I said control there because we are controlling it, of proteins. And this triggers fibroblast and tissue remodeling. And this happens with RF microneedling and ultrasound technologies. Not only and solely those two, but those are examples of two. Now, when we look at high heat, so 100 to 300 degrees centigrade, and this is where I really love going because I love ablation and vaporization. It stimulates the body's wound healing response to generate collagen type 3. And then that collagen type 3 is later replaced by a stronger collagen type 1. And this increases the tensile strength of the skin. And those fractional lasers and ablative resurfacing really shine in this category. So you can see that by stacking these 3 different categories of heat, we create multiple layers of collagen remodeling in just one session. So if we turn that into something that's real world, because now you're saying to me, well, heat, I don't really understand. But if we turn that into real world, we look at, an Nd:YAG in a very ultra short pulse mode, which is more of a superficial laser peel, as we might call it. This stimulates fibroblasts and causes that immediate collagen contraction. So you can actually physically see the skin looks tighter. Feels it too if you have your patient feel it. Then if you look at RF microneedle and ultrasound, that triggers that neocollagenesis and neoelastogenesis while reorganizing all those collagen fibers. They get really unorganized, by the way, as we get older. So that's another thing that it helps. And then when we look at fractional erbium YAG or maybe a fractional CO2, that's where we're looking at vaporizing tissue, and that initiates that wound healing response that leads to that long-term structural improvement. So this triple threat is what I would call it, delivers both that immediate tightening and then that deep regenerative changes in collagen over time.
Thank you. And you do a great job of just breaking down, like I'm a visual learner in the way you tell word stories. So that helps me. I can see what you're talking about. Can't imagine doing it, but I can see it. And I think that's so important. And again, with our listeners, just really trying to, what is in this that's going to work for you? How could you be part of something that's innovative and leading edge in your industry? So let's go to another question. So one key benefit of stacking, as we've talked about, is reduced downtime. How does this impact patient experience and treatment satisfaction? I guess both from I think both from the physical standpoint, but also the confidence, the emotional standpoint, the self.
100%, 100%. Patients just don't have the patience for downtime. Okay. So, there's this reduced downtime that all of them are looking for. And stacking consolidates that recovery by combining, of course, like I've said, the multiple procedures into one session. It reduces the number of times that the patient has to go into the healing phase and also the amount of times that they have to come into clinic. How many people have the time now to come into the clinic all the time? That's very difficult, especially as we're having more and more congestion in the cities and things like that. It's more difficult to travel around. There's also sort of like the idea of having to leave your house, let's say in the winter, and go somewhere and get these treatments done. It becomes arduous, right? And most of us now, a lot of us are working at home. And so having to leave the home, having to get ready, go out, do all this stuff, go to a clinic, it's a big process. So people want to reduce the number of times that they have to do that. But a real key to a positive patient experience is setting those right expectations though up front. So a well-informed patient is far more likely to be satisfied through this. And that's why you really need a good consultation, because stacking, although there's great benefits to it, there's also a downside to it. The downside is that they have a little bit more downtime, a little bit more erythema and edema, so that's swelling and redness in the skin, and you need to prepare them for that. You need to discuss the benefits of stacking for faster results, fewer treatments, etc. But then you have to talk about those trade-offs. You can't just keep that to yourself and hope for the best, because at the end of the treatment, when they look at themselves in the mirror and they go, I'm not doing a selfie tomorrow, I'm not jumping on that Zoom meeting, that's going to be a problem. You have to tell them they're going to have a little bit more downtime. Maybe their skin's going to be a bit more sensitive as well. And it's going to take a little bit longer for that initial healing phase. So being realistic with these timelines is the most important thing with your patients. And just don't assume that they understand this, because they don't know this. And then explain to them those biological processes and why it takes longer, but why you're doing it. So why am I stacking? I'm not doing this to cause you more discomfort. I'm doing this to save you time, save you energy, get you better treatment results, and all of those things. And also explain to them that even though I'm doing all of this, at the end of the treatment program, most treatment programs, it takes 3 to 6 months for a patient to see their final results. That's not going to change if I stack or don't stack. So you're still going to have to wait for results. So making sure that you manage those expectations properly is a real key in making sure that when you're doing stacking, it still produces a satisfied and happy patient.
Yeah, if we think about this entire process as a function of change, because you're changing something, we know in business, we know in that 70% of change fails because of insufficient communication. Not necessarily insufficient, but just meeting the entire audience where they're at, rather than one person driving a conversation that only meets his world at, and everybody else has to figure out what to do. And I think that's such a big part of this is communication. And I think but communication is not just a technical explanation, to your point of what it's going to take. There's a process which is really, really important, obviously. But with that as well, as you say, the healing time. But then I love that idea, the idea of being Zoom ready. That's really, nobody said that before. You've got something there. The idea of being Zoom ready. And that's a great benchmark. So when will I be Zoom ready? That's a great question. This is what it looks like. And I think it's, I've noticed that a lot of, and what I've heard a lot is that often practitioners kind of cut the conversation short, more not because of time, but because if they over explain, they're going to get into something that they don't want to have to get back out of. But
exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's got to be, and that's really, in my world, that's where you're in my neighborhood now. That's where the fear of conflict lives. And it's so critical that you actually over communicate, even because, having said everything we just said, in building the trust and the relationship with that particular client, that patient, a patient that goes through that and has a great experience with that, how much more likely are they to tell their friends? And that's your best form of business growth that you'll ever get, and the cheapest.
And you know what? I've had a lot of criticism about my consults because I take an hour to do a consult and I don't charge for it. And it's not that I don't value my time, because I've had people send me that, you don't value your time and things like that. And I'll say, no, I actually do value my time a great deal. But number one, I'm very confident that at the end of that consult, that patient is going to want to stay with me. But I also want to know as much as I can about them in 1 hour. I don't know a lot about you in 15 to 20 minutes, but I know a lot about you in an hour. And I ask you a lot of questions. I'm not telling you a lot about myself. I tell you a little bit to credential myself. But other than that, I'm educating you. I'm focusing on you, because guess what? This is your consult. And I want to know as much as I can. I'm able to control a lot of things, and I can control the outcome. I can control what treatments I'm offering you. I can make sure that I'm delivering the right things, and I can really get down to what you need. And I'll tell you that 9 times out of 10, when I've rushed the consult, when I've shortened it and made it only a half an hour, those are my patients who've been unhappy, because I haven't got to the root of the problem with them. And I haven't explained everything really well. And those are the people that come back and they're not happy with the service, or I haven't given them the right thing, or I didn't realize that that's what they were actually focusing on. Because somebody might say during a consult, oh, what's really bothering me is how aged and tired I look. And so I'm starting to look at doing something like an erbium resurfacing on them. Suddenly I find out what they mean by aged is actually more about, the color of their skin. And I should have been using an IPL. And I've been using the wrong tool because I wasn't listening. I was rushing through the consult. So when I'm working with clinics and they tell me, oh, my consult process is 15 or 20 minutes, that's where I say, that's where you're going wrong. You need an hour. It's going to come back to you tenfold that time.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head. The listening thing, we're not really good at listening. It's not some people are, but generally speaking, and there's a reason that we talk about active listening in a process. I find it kind of funny. I think in the industry, you talk about having the consultation. And I think the consultation is a misnomer if you really want to create a wide entry meeting experience, because I think consultation, I immediately think technical. But if I think about a wellness planning session, I'm just using my words, that has a whole broader context to me. That's just what you described. It's about we're gonna find out what you're looking for, what's your vision for you looked in the mirror and you're not familiar with who you are. What would make you familiar with what you see in the mirror, and whatever that looks like. And I think that the idea is, I'm a mediator, and the most common thing that I see where the conflict occurs is what one person said and the other person heard are two different things.
Yes.
And we both think we're listening and talking, but we're not. And so one of the techniques that we use, Lon, I encourage a lot, and I had a couple now with some aesthetic coaching clients now, is the idea of what we do in mediation is paraphrasing or summarizing what I've heard. So what I heard you say was this. And so let me just summarize what I heard. And as soon as we do that, the other person is either going to just say, yeah, that's exactly what I meant, but I'll tell you, most of the time they're going to say, well, that's not really quite what I meant. Or not at all.
Exactly.
And it's fascinating. Yet you were all set to go in your 15 minutes based on what you thought you heard, and what they thought they said that you heard, and surprise, surprise, that's not the case. And that's where bad reviews come.
Yes.
It's not that you didn't try. It's not that and that's where frustration comes, because here you are thinking, we did it. I know this is what I told them. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's what they heard. But if you haven't done active listening, we call that, by simply paraphrasing, what I think I heard you say was this, and summarizing is another great strategy. So you had 2 or 3 points, and this is what I got out of it. Huge tool. And I know that you would, just the way you laid that out, I know that you do that. That's part of the journey of your 1 hour. But that's why it takes a little more time.
Yes.
But I'll tell you, if you take that time, the return on investment, not just simply financially, but patient-wise and brand-wise and future growth-wise, is massive.
Absolutely. It's also taking out the personal out of it. So, and when I say personal, it's what I see. So, and that's something that took me a long time. I've been in the industry for 30 years, and I'll tell you that it probably took me 15 years to get rid of this, is when you look at somebody, you put your own opinion on them and you think, oh, if only I could get rid of that little spot here, or if I could, help them with lifting this. And you know what? That's maybe not what they see. And I had one of my most unhappy patients. I treated her and I had an incredible lift to her skin. Her skin looked amazing. Literally, I turned back the clock. I'm not going to exaggerate, like 10 years. She literally had, her whole jawline was sculpted. She looked beautiful. She came in, she was so mad. And I looked at her, I was like, look at your before and afters. Now I'm trying to justify. I don't understand what's going on. Again, I wasn't listening. I was personifying what I wanted to see in her skin. She said to me, you know what? All of my pigment is still there. I still have all this sun damage. I still look old. And she wanted her money back. And you know what? At that point, I sat there, and that was a really big turning point for me. I sat there and I thought, wow, I can't believe I just did that. I fell into a trap. I actually did give her money back because I realized it was my fault for that. And, if I did, I didn't. But if I did get a bad review, it was my fault. So in those kind of cases, I really learned to step back and not say, a lot of patients will say, what do you see? And I always say the same thing to them. I see a beautiful human sitting across me because that's what I believe in all people. All people are beautiful humans. And I'm not looking at you in little sums of your face or what your beauty is, your aesthetic. I look at you as a whole. And so I look at skin health. So if I did see somebody with acne, I would say, well, I see some acne and we can look at skin health. If I saw that their skin had dehydration, I'd say, I do see dehydration because these are skin health. But when it comes to beauty and aesthetic, I'm not getting into that. I want to see what you see.
Mm-hmm. And that's what one person sees in the mirror is something completely different from someone else. And, we have a bias with our own kids, how we see that and our spouses. But in my coaching world, we often ask the question, what do you want your story to be in a year from now or 2 years from now, whatever that might look like? And we kind of reverse engineer that back. And there's an interesting line. As you're talking, I'm just thinking, what would you like to see in the mirror in a year from now? And if I bring that back, that's what I need to reverse engineer back to today. So here's what we're going to do to get there. And I think that idea
that's great.
And it's really about casting a vision that is more holistic in not just what you do and how you do it, but in who they are and why they matter and how you're going to build a relationship with them in those two of the three spaces of any organization, the third being creative. But yeah, well, thank you. That's here we go. We're on, Tracey. I said I wasn't going to go there, but I'm already off on a tangent. There we go. But that was good. I think it's so important, though. I think you brought up, so again, this idea of taking time with the patient. If you invest in the front end with somebody,
yes,
and you build the relationship on the front end, you will get returns. It's kind of like, if you think of that wellness planning session or consultation, whatever you want to call it, if you think of that kind of like an annuity, you invest in it today, it has dividends tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So now that I'm in a business mindset, so from a business perspective, how does stacking treatments increase revenue and boost the value of a session for both the patient and the clinic?
So from that business standpoint, stacking treatments isn't just about improving those patient outcomes like we've been saying. It's a powerful strategy. It's actually a strategy to increase revenue and enhance the overall value of a session for both you and the clinic. So it's not just for the patient, it's for both of you. So here's the thing. When patients come in for fewer visits, each session is more profitable because each time you're receiving multiple treatments, but that's just one sitting. So in that 1 hour or hour and a half, instead of treating a patient 5 separate times over several months, you're consolidating all those treatments into fewer. And these are high value visits. This allows your team then free time to serve more patients, new patients, existing patients. Patients also receive more of a customized multimodality treatment. They're actually far less likely to shop around based on price alone. So listen to me here. So when your service becomes more unique because it's tailored to their needs, it makes it harder for a competitor to offer that identical experience. A clinic down the street might have all the same devices, which is unlikely, but could happen. But there's no way that they have your specific protocol, expertise, and approach. There's no way. So patients who undergo these stacked treatments, they see results faster, like we just talked about. It increases their overall satisfaction. And now we know that they have a likelihood of returning for more things like maintenance and other procedures, right? Because they're not going somewhere else, because they're not price comparing. Also, a lot of patients now will recognize more of the value of having something comprehensive. than just somebody who sits down in a consult and says, okay, you can have an IPL treatment, check, into the room you go. They love the idea of sitting down with you and really having a full program. They see a roadmap. And I often do that. I'll say, this is where we're going on our journey together. Because this is us together. We're not parting now. You and I are together for life. And so the bottom line here is that stacking treatments doesn't reduce revenue, which is what a lot of people think. It actually gives you more appointment time during the day because you're being more, I'm going to say, efficient with producing one treatment per patient that actually produces more revenue, but allowing your staff to have a little bit more time to serve other patients now, rather than that continual same person coming in 5 times.
Yeah, I like how you we talk, about having a unique selling position, which is exactly what you're talking about. It's the idea that you're doing something different than anybody else is. If we think about a restaurant, you go to a restaurant, what do they give you? A menu. And you look at the menu, and if the menu just had, 1 or 2 things on it in each of the food groups, I mean, if it was known for that, and whatever they did, or it was a table home menu for on a daily basis, if they're known for that, then that's why you go there. But most of us go to a restaurant, we like to look at the choices, but we also don't like to look at too many choices. And then what do we also do? We also ask the waiter, what is your favorite? What do you like? What's pop? And so there's this whole idea is that this business is not a commodity-based business. There's people trying to make it that. There's industries trying to turn it into a price war. But if you can, as Tracey just laid it out, if you can, we call it in the manufacturing sector, barriers to entry. There's things that you do that nobody else can do the way you do it, which is the personalized approach, which is having a reception concierge, which is having whatever these pieces are that make you unique in the marketplace that people are talking about. It creates a barrier that others can't enter. Well, they could try, but they can never duplicate exactly what you do because you do it. But if you don't own that, the challenge in that, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Tracey, but it's one thing. There's a law. The law of the lid says that an organization can only grow as high as its leader. And so if the leader isn't casting vision that's really about that kind of a philosophy, then it's not going to flow back down. If you tell them and it looks different up at the top, then it will not happen. So it needs to be a very comprehensive flow. What is the vision you have for customer service to set up your unique selling position in a way that nobody can touch your market share? But you can take other people's.
And the thing is, too, is when you have a menu, and I've gone into consults before where someone hands me a menu of services and then says, what would you like to have? And I'm like, I know, but I don't know. I'm in your clinic. I'm looking for you for expertise to tell me what I need. And so I like to have a better approach in that case is instead of just showing them a list of all the treatments you have, you choose for them, you help them, you guide them. And that's what's important. And that's where stacking comes in, is really understanding each one of those modalities and choosing them for them and coming up with a bespoke program. I'm all about bespoke. I'm all about choosing for the patient and really making sure that they have something that's customized. I don't want them walking around in the same clothes as everyone else. I want them to have something unique.
That's the stuff that cocktail conversations are made of, that bring new customers into your business. So for me, as I would look at an aesthetic website, have done it many times, and where I go to the page with all the services. I'm interested and look at all the services. But at the end of the day, I've never looked at a page and said, well, I know exactly from that what I want to get. I just like to have, it's like we're so driven by Google search that we love to search things out, but there's so much information now and what's really right and what's wrong. The trust relationship that occurs in that consultation time, that connecting, that, well, I've seen all your stuff, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to your point, we're going to craft this beautiful wellness program for you that's going to just meet all of those, that desired outcome you're looking for in a year from now.
Absolutely. And, I agree with you about the web pages. I see it all the time. And I think we forget that as treatment providers and business owners, we are posting on those websites what we want to see. We're not posting what the patient is actually looking for. So a patient isn't going to typically type in there, I'm looking for an intense pulse light treatment, or I'm looking for an RF microneedle treatment. They're looking for texture, they're looking for tone, they're looking for pigment, they're looking all of these things. So maybe listing it by indication would be more patient friendly. And I'm not saying to not have your technology listed. Of course, you have to for SEO, but you should have a separate section that patients can search for their indications and understand that, hey, I don't have one thing that addresses wrinkles. I have 10. And they go, wow, this person really knows how to address a wrinkle. I'm going to go and see them. So it's really to help them understand that you have a toolbox of things that can address their issues at different levels, different types of depths in the skin.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. And I think it's what I've noticed in websites, what they don't have is an entry point that speaks to the why. So it doesn't speak to the vision. You're probably here because you've looked in the mirror and you're not familiar with who's in the mirror, or whatever it is, whatever the most common denominator or collection of what people see about themselves. What we're experts at is making the complex simple, unpacking the leading edge technologies in a way that you can both understand them and we can, quote unquote, make you beautiful. Just to make a simple statement. But, okay. Well, that's what and this is, that's okay. It's the concept, Dell came along and said, we make computers and printers and all this stuff. Would you like to buy one? That was our marketing strategy since the day of beginning of television. But today it's more the Apple model where we're creating this community and this unique life experience how we're going to do things and connect with each other and communicate with each other. Would you like to join us? Oh, and by the way, we are going to sell iPads and iPhones and iWatches and all that. They they invited people to a relationship that was uniquely different than anything else we'd ever experienced. And we all know the outcome of that. Well, what's at risk for you to do that in your own aesthetics practice? And how do you approach that in a way? It's almost that's where I believe this is the value of somebody like Tracey being, we're going to talk a little later as we wrap up, we'll talk about just how, where you can reach her. But this is where you need having outside input is really valuable because you can only often see it through the lens of what you see. And it's very difficult to see it through other people's eyes. It's like the fruit plate, you can see it. If it has lights over it and you look at it, you see the fruit in a certain way. If I move the lights, it looks different. And that's what a coach and a consultant does, is helps move the lights. So I want to I got one question I want to wrap up with today, Tracey. And so how can clinics effectively educate their patients about the benefits of stack treatments to encourage adoption, obviously, and of course, maximize success?
So education, I keep saying, is the way that you encourage adaptation and also ensuring that they have long-term success. So a great starting point is to address the root cause of that concern. So patients often fixate on the surface level. So what they see, so the wrinkles, the pigment, laxity, but they don't really understand what's happening beneath the skin. Patients really appreciate you taking the time to explain how collagen loss, structure changes, and then whatnot contribute to visible signs of aging, and that you help them see then why a more comprehensive approach is necessary. They understand that and they really do appreciate it. And when patients understand the why behind that concern, they're more open to whatever solutions you have that's going just beyond just one treatment that touches just the surface symptoms, if you will. So once they see the bigger picture, it's important to highlight why stacking treatments in particular produce better results than standalone procedures. So typical single treatments will address, like I said, just one aspect of skin health, whereas a multimodality approach, so that will address multiple effects. And that's deeper, it's more long-lasting improvement. And by explaining this and doing a thorough consult on how you're going to combine, let's say, ultrasound for lifting, an RF microneedle for collagen remodeling, IPL for pigment correction. All these things can accelerate those transformations and help the patient recognize efficiency and effectiveness of that stack. Also, I like to show them before and afters that showcase enhanced outcomes of the stack treatment versus before and afters of individual sessions. And this builds more confidence in the process. So lastly, like my biggest point is customization. And this is what makes stack treatments feel more like it's an investment to them rather than just like, oh, she's trying to upsell me. Each patient has different skin concerns, goals and tolerance for downtime, et cetera. So making a treatment plan that's specific and tailored to them doesn't feel like a sale. Setting clear expectations with them about the healing time, the results, and then follow-up care, making sure that they're prepared, and all of that makes them feel like that is a treatment program for them, not just a single treatment. So there are some patients, though, that will still prefer that gradual step-by-step approach, and that's okay. That's okay. Just tell them, fine, no problem. But offer them both stacked and sequential options and allow them to make the best decision based on their comfort level. But you still reinforce why stacking treatments will deliver more efficient outcomes. Because obviously for your business as well, it's a better outcome. So at the core of a successful patient education is that layer of trust. And when clinics take the time in consult to explain the science, the process, the personalization, so take the time to personalize stacking, the patient is going to feel more confident in those choices. And it's not just going to increase the treatment acceptance, but it will also improve their compliance with you, so coming in for their treatments. And also it does increase their satisfaction because they believe more in you and in the treatments. This leads to stronger long-term relationships with the clinic and obviously more referrals in the future.
Tracey, thank you so much. Our time is coming to an end, so I'm going to I think before we head out, just if somebody wants to reach out to you, which I'm sure we've got some listeners that are going like, okay, you've sold, well, you haven't tried to sell anything. You've cast a vision. You've cast a vision for me that I'd like to know more about. How can people reach you?
Well, they can reach me at Tracey at traceymancuso.com, and that's a Tracey with an EY. And they can certainly look at me on Instagram, which is Tracey Lizsa, Tracey Lizsa. That's my Instagram handle. And I have lots of freebies on there too, because anything that I develop that I really like, I often just give away. So check it out as well. And always hit me up. I never mind, because I really believe that it is our responsibility, those of us who've been in the industry a long time, to support each other and support newbies, because I love to see people succeed. And so writing to me, asking me questions, you're never bothering me. I never mind.
Well, that is awesome, Tracey. Well, I'm pretty sure you're going to get some, if not, certainly, if I was new, I know who I'd be reaching out to. And I said earlier, I said, you exude the qualities that we talk about with an influential leader. And we define an influential leader as somebody who gives somebody something they don't even know they need or want. But once they have it, they can't imagine live without it. And then they can't wait to give it away. I think you just kind of pretty much modeled that today for us. So thank you, Tracey.
Amazing.
And thank you for your expertise on the power of stack treatments, maximizing results and revenue. Your insights into how clinics can enhance patient outcomes while increasing profitability were incredibly valuable, and we really appreciate your time. I also want to take a moment to thank all of our amazing listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we couldn't do what we do without your support. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your colleagues and friends on social media and help us spread knowledge within the aesthetics community, just as Tracey is doing. Also, don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your review helps other doctors and practice owners discover our podcast and gain valuable insights to grow their business. And before we go, a special thank you again to Equa Marketing, our sponsor for this episode, who have over 20 years of experience in digital marketing for aesthetic practices. And you recall I mentioned that Equa is offering you a complimentary digital marketing consultation that includes a custom 12-month strategy tailored to your practice. So if you want to head over to businessofesthetics.org/MSM to book a consultation, I encourage you to do that. I mean, what's at risk to do it? Just some time. What's at risk not to? Well, you'll need to weigh that for yourself. But until next time, keep striving for excellence, elevating patient care, and on behalf of Tracey, making a lasting impact in your industry. Wishing you all an amazing week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.